Hi Year 12s, Miss Brooks here. I'm just going to go through a couple of quick essay unpackings and I'll just do one topic at a time and load them separately. So the crucial function of art is to tell the truth. Now this is a quote from Harry that occurs during the film and he is contesting Sarah's approach to truth-telling. And the kind of stem from that is, to what extent does Sarah Polley's use of actors and reenactments undermine the truth of stories we tell? So if you want something a little bit more developed, I will provide a link underneath this slide for something more detailed, but I thought a quicker kind of summarized version might be the go for people who are just wanting to quickly watch a few 5-minute videos. So, the revelation that Polley is responsible for directing much of the apparently genuine home movie footage in the film, much of which substantiates the storyteller's accounts, throws the truth about who Diane was into question. So, you need to unpack then the seamless weaving together from the opening montage all the way through to the end of images and footage of Diane, which was presented as genuine. This substantiates the storyteller's narrative that Diane was fun, busy, loving, etc. When it's revealed that Polley is actually directing actress Rebecca Jenkins in the role. The purpose of this revelation, and I think the obvious showing of this revelation, which occurs I think probably around the hour mark, and you can see Sarah behind the scenes directing the footage with someone holding the camera and then her talking to the actress Rebecca Jenkins, etc. So the purpose of that revelation is to challenge the audience to reflect on what they have observed thus far, to feel just in the same way Sarah does when she's doing this, conducting this journey into the truth and her mother and finding out what she can. This sense of disorientation and wondering where the line between fact and fiction lies. And also I think the bigger question is whether that line matters at all. And I think in the end, which is where I'm going with this, is that Sarah isn't concerned necessarily with where necessarily that line exists, but she instead claims that actually multiple versions of a person can exist in the minds of other people, and that's perfectly okay, and she really embraces that reality. The fact is, and therefore I'm getting to the end of this paragraph, Sarah is not pursuing the truth. Her goal is to illuminate the story of her mother, but also the process of storytelling. So it's not about a simple divide between true and false, and therefore the use of actors and reenactments doesn't undermine that, because that's not actually her goal. Okay, then Polley's film is a journey to bring to life the images of her mother based on the memories of others. She's not pursuing a single concrete truth, which is dismissed as illusory. So it's through these images that you illuminate who Diane, and that's to further expand on the true images, like the archival footage of her singing Ain't Misbehaving, which is actually quite limited. You've only got that one set of footage with her and sound at the same time. All the rest is silent. And so Polley seems to kind of want to strengthen that part of the narrative, and so she includes the recreations. She strengthens these images with additional footage which visually illustrates the way in which memory is not necessarily reliable but is impacted by time and emotions. So even you could look at, I think a good scene here would be when they're having the discussion about whether Diane knows that she is dying from cancer. And it's the scene of her in the garage, quite busy, and it's recreated footage. But it shows at the same time how Michael can perceive Diane as not understanding that she's dying, but Mort and Johnny and Harry all knowing that she knew, or all claiming to know that she knew she was dying, how those two things can exist simultaneously, because Harry and John, the others, see one side of her, and maybe she was putting on a brave face for Michael, or maybe he personally just didn't see that she knew. Who knows? And then what is remembered is at times contradictory, but Polley suggests that neither memory, if in the contradictory sense, is untruthful, simply that many truths exist and that Diane was many different things to different people. And that brings to mind the quote from early in the film that says she had different faces for the world. So again, you want to come back to the fact that it actually strengthens her narrative to show the different face as she was to the world, and she needed more footage to do that. She was limited in what she had, and she wanted to make that a significant part of her film. Okay, and the last one is looking at really the meta-narrative. So critics of Polly's methodology, and that is the way she goes about making her film, her construction process, her mode of creation, such as Michael and Harry, argue that conveying the truth requires greater simplicity. And what I mean by that is that Michael says the only way to get to the truth is to play the interview as is without editing, 6 hours straight, because if you interfere, you'll make it something, quote, entirely different. And whereas Harry says you have to be the principal party, there should be a single narrator, because the crucial function of art, which he sees this film as, is to tell the truth. And so he disagrees with what could be described as Polly's democratic approach, with multiple voices and interviews with her different storytellers. And he says that the people who are in the concentric circles around it shouldn't be commenting, as it's disruptive and misleading because they don't know the full truth. However, ultimately, despite the fact that Michael thinks this isn't the normal way of doing things and this tension that exists, it's ultimately Polly's film, and her theory of filmmaking is the one that we see. Though she embraces the criticism, because she didn't even have to show these, she could just not include them, she does openly have this discussion about what is true and what is not, because obviously Harry has a problem with this aspect of it, as does Michael, because he thinks that's not truthful, the editing of it. She embraces the criticism and includes them, giving the audience the chance to determine fact and fiction for themselves. So I think ultimately she leaves it up to the audience to determine whether they think the truth is undermined. But she says, but that's not what my film's about. You can decide what you think is truthful, but really my whole film is about storytelling and all these other things. It's not restricted just to the idea of what is true and what is not. It's about much more than that. So I think that's where you could come to with that. All right, I'll leave this screencast and we'll look at the next topic in a moment.